Welcome back to another C Designs woodworking video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I created a beautiful oak sign, Bring the Book. Follow along and see how it came to life. Now this beautiful piece of oak has been sitting around for some time, and it may not look very appealing right now, but just wait after we get it all milled up, see how it comes back to life. First of all, you got to start out by cutting it down close to size. I don't have it quite where I want the finish size to be. That way I can do a little bit of cleanup after I get everything milled up. As always, a lot of my wood that I use is not dimensional lumber, so I've got to mill it up to get it down to that final smooth look and finish. It all depends on how you get it milled up. It's going to depend on how much sanding you're going to have to do at the very end. Once you get one side nice and smooth and flat, it's time to do the other side. We got to get both sides all ready for the glue up, because we're going to be putting letters on this sign, so you want it very smooth and flat, so that way those letters don't have a tendency to pop off later on. You'll see as it goes along. Then I hit it with the belt sander for just a quick sanding to knock out any imperfections that the planer may have caused while it was going through. And so I used the belt sander just to get done a little quicker than just a regular orbital sander. Then after I got done sanding, then it was time to get the final dimensions on the height of this sign. So I took it back over to the table saw and started ripping it down to its final height dimensions. Now once I had finished ripping down the board to the final height, I took it over to the miter saw where I squared up one edge so that I can get a true measurement on the length of this sign. With the straight edge cut, now it was time to get the length cut down to size. First I got to get it measured up, and then I can cut it down. Now I haven't really given you the measurements of this sign because every project is different. This ended up being about 1.5 feet in height and a little under 4 foot long. And here I had to slide my miter saw station over just a little bit on its pedestal stand so that I could get the board to fit in my workspace. Once I got it all set, then I was able to get the end cut off. Now I make one cut and then I measure again and I sneak up on my line. It's always good to sneak up on your line. Now I wanted to add a little bit of character to this sign, so I decided to put some 45-degree angle cuts on just the corners, the 4 corners of the sign. So here you can see where I've set my miter saw to a 45-degree angle and then started to make cuts. Now as I made these 45-degree cuts, I would set it and then I would make my cut, and then it wouldn't be right up against the line because then I sneak up onto that line as I'm cutting it, and that just ensures that I'm not cutting into it too far. As I finish up my 45-degree cuts, this completes the backer part of this sign. Now we get to move on into scrolling the letters. Once I have the templates onto the board that I'm going to be using, I then split up the board between each of the letters. This will just help when I am actually doing the scroll sawing where I don't have to use such a big board as I turn the board around the blade and follow that pattern. As I finish splitting all the letters up so that they are individual, I then take it over to the drill press. Now I'm only doing the letters that have center parts to them, the B's, the R's, and so forth. This allows me to get my blade inside the letter so that way I can scroll out the center parts. As you can see here, I'm starting with the center part. I will scroll the center part out first, and then I will move to the outside. Now I could bore you with hours of scroll sawing footage, because believe me, I do have hours of scroll sawing footage, and if you would like to see that, let me know, and I'll be glad to put up hours of scroll sawing footage. But most of you would probably get pretty bored and move on to another video. The key to scroll sawing is take your time. If you take your time, there's less likely that you're going to make mistakes. Now you can't go by these videos because I have sped them up so that there isn't as much time lapse scroll sawing. So take your time and just follow the pattern slowly. It also involves using some imagination, trying to figure out how to make your turns so you can kind of get into those corners. But with anything, practice makes perfect. Now, if this is your first time seeing anybody scroll saw and it interests you, head over to YouTube. There's a lot of videos out there and tutorials on how to do it. It also gives a lot of interesting facts on how other people will scroll saw. There's also a lot of different things you can scroll saw, from letters to 3D signage to little trinkets. So if you're interested in it, head over, check it out. I really enjoy doing it. It's kind of calming and soothing, and I enjoy taking the time to do it. Well, here we come to more sanding. With scroll sawing, these little pieces, letters, whatever it may be, have to be sanded down and smoothed out. This is also where I'll round off the edges for the letters so it gives a nice round over effect. Some people may use a router with a round over bit, but I find it much easier just to lightly sand it and just give it that nice little bit of a cleanup look to it. Best thing to do during this time, if you're the one doing the sanding, pop in some music with some earbuds or some headphones or even a radio in your shop, maybe a podcast, and just go to town. It does take some time. It has to be done, and when you're done, it just makes the whole project have that wow factor to it. With the letters all sanded and prepped and ready for stain, I took those inside and my wife graciously stained those for me while I started milling up the pieces for the border around the edge of the sign. Now this part of the wood was probably the most warped and cupped part of the oak. So I had to break out the joiner and run it through the joiner a few times, and then once I got one side flat, I then took it back over to the planer and planed the other side. Once smooth, I cut everything into 1/4-inch strips. Then it was back to sanding the back portion of this sign, or the backer. I hadn't got the final sanding on everything, so I started with the 80 grit, headed down to a 120, and finished it off with 220, which is a fine sandpaper, and that will get it to a very, very smooth finish. I have no video of attaching the letters to the backer, but as you can see here, they've already been glued on. And now I'm putting on the border around the edge. I marked the areas where I need to make my angle cuts, and these were interesting angles. Of course, it's not going to be a 45, it's not going to be a 90 degree. It ends up being 22.5 or 22.5 degrees of an angle, and that'll get you that nice corner. Now, I wasn't sure exactly where to start putting all this stuff together, so I started on one end, and I figured I'll get the edges on the very end done first, these corners right here, and then I would get the long sections done in the middle and then move down to the other side. That way I can push everything up kind of towards one end. Here you can see I'm sneaking up on the edge here where that 22.5 degree angle is. There's multiple times where I had to go back and just sneak up on that mark. A lot of going back and forth, testing it just to make sure that it fit in there properly, because this is going to be the finished product and you want it to look very, very well put together, almost as if there's no seams. And as you've been watching me do this, I use a little bit of glue, and I don't do too much because I don't want it to squeeze out, and I have to wipe a lot of glue off. And I use a few brad nails just to hold it in place so that glue can dry good and tight right up against the edge of the backer. Time to finish up all the edges or the border pieces. Sand all the corners, make sure they're nice and flush. Don't want anybody getting hurt, and you want it to look flawless. Once you get everything sanded up, hit the back one more time just to make sure everything is nice and smooth. And then this will be ready for some finish. Then it was time to finish everything off with the Total Boat Halcyon Clear Varnish. Again, like I've said in previous videos, this is my go-to finish for many of my projects. Easy to apply, you can put down multiple coats within just a couple of hours, and it usually sands off to a very, very glossy finish. Thanks again to all my viewers for taking a moment and watching my video. I really do hope to inspire some of you to get out there and maybe try your hand at some woodworking. 'Tis the season, it is the end of the year. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And until the next video, keep liking and sharing with your family and friends.